Once upon a time, in a land far, far away, there was a magical place. A place where the homeless reigned supreme. Syringe needles covered the streets as far as the eyes could see, and the land littered with liberal hipsters looking down upon you in disgust while gripping their $8 iced chai lattes with oat milk, on their way to be of no use to society whatsoever. In a way, I felt home. I'm just kidding. San Francisco is a dump. I got lost in San Francisco on the most intense mushroom trip, let me tell you. Here is my story. The year was long ago, and it was my girlfriend at the time. It was her birthday. She said to me, "I want to go trip on mushrooms at Golden Gate Park." And I said, "Yeah, sounds like a good time. Why not? Of course. What could possibly go wrong?" Everything seemed to be normal except for the two shady and conspicuous individuals about to embark on a journey of self-destruction. I see now how they emphasize the importance of set and setting. The first red flag was for whatever reason we were running late. Everything was packed and ready, the hotel secured, but the day was slipping away from us. We didn't arrive at the hotel until like 2 or 3 in the afternoon. The average mushroom trip is 8 hours. The second red flag was that my phone was at like 43%. When we arrived at the hotel, I was reminded of the hit classic of a lady, her milkshakes, and boys in the yard. The simple fact was that I had to charge. But because it was getting late, I half-assed charged my phone for 30 minutes and said, "Screw it, let's go." So we got onto one of the cable cars and headed straight for Golden Gate Park. However, I never actually considered writing down any directions. I think I just assumed that, we would find our way back. Not exactly my finest moment, okay? We get to the park and, of course, it was quite beautiful. The day was cool and the sky was overcast. It was as if there was one large, dark gray cloud covering the entire sky. The breeze was crisp, cooled by the nearby ocean. The first thing we saw was this big open field where people were playing with their dogs and playing frisbee, but we decided to descend further into the forest to embark on this magical adventure. We walked around for like 15 to 20 minutes until we found a secluded area where we would not be seen. I whipped out my backpack and pulled out 2 little baggies of some good. I think we also had some vitamin C tablets, if I'm not mistaken. We were not messing around. We munched like gerbils for a few minutes, and then the deed was done. There was no turning back now. Now, up until this point in my life, I was no lightweight when it comes to these kind of things. I think I was around 19 years old, but I had already had my fair share of experiences. The dosage was nothing out of the ordinary. It was like 3.5 grams. It just so happened to be that these were the most potent mushrooms that I had tried. After a few moments, we got up and continued along our journey. Onward we went. We were both introverts, so for a while we were both kind of in our own little worlds. Once the magic began to kick in, I started seeing gnomes in all of the knots in the trees. The knots in the trees were kind of like warping into the faces of gnomes far out. Eventually we made it to a large pond that was somewhere in the park. We approached near a small opening in the pond. There was a path all the way around and trees and bushes everywhere. On the other side of the pond you could see a bench for people to sit and relax when they've taken too many drugs. We stopped for a moment to take in the scenery, and a moment later I watched a flock of ducks, fly down into the center of the pond, like 30 or 40 feet away. I stood there silently, just focusing my attention on these ducks. As soon as the ducks landed in the water, they made a beeline straight for us. A flock of like 10 to 15 ducks were staring straight at me as they swam over to us. They approached the shore and began wobbling together around to the right of us, still looking at us the whole time. After a few ducks had wobbled behind us, in synchronistic fashion, they all took flight right over us. It was quite the magical moment. I remember the first thought in my head was, oh my God, is this a sign that I should marry this girl? But by the end of the night, I would have my answer. We continued on the path higher into the park until we reached the peak. Not peak drugs, but peak hill. There was a bench that I sat down for a moment. I looked out, and to my surprise, the trees were looking back at me. It was as if the trees recognized my presence and were just as aware of me as I was aware of them. But here's where things got interesting. By this point, we both recognized that it was getting kind of late, and she simply asked me, how are we going to get back? This was something I had never thought of. However, there was a voice inside my head that kept saying the same thing over and over again. And this voice said, there is only one way. So I had trust and faith that this voice would lead me to wherever we needed to go. But I don't think that she was so convinced. As we began making our way back out of the park, she continued to ask me from time to time, how are we going to get back? And I would just reply, there is only one way. But I became a bit concerned myself. So I pulled out my phone to see if we could get the maps going. There was only one problem. Human technology no longer made any sense. I continuously stared down at my phone, hoping to find a way to get back to the hotel. But I literally could not comprehend what I was looking at. It's as if I was a caveman who had never seen a phone before. No matter how hard I tried, there was no ability whatsoever to navigate this device. It might as well have been alien technology. Not only this, but my phone was about to die. Time was of the essence. I needed to bring myself down back to reality, or we were going to be stuck out here in the dark. We approached a person on a bike, and we asked him for directions. He pointed us down the right path, and I felt a bit of relief. But I had realized that the voice in my head was right. There was only one way, because the paths in the park were designed to lead you back to the entrance. As we continued to walk, I tried again to decipher this technology, but to no avail. We finally made it to the entrance of the park and saw where we got off on the cable car. Okay, good, we're on the right track. We got inside and sat down, and I looked up to my right, and there was a sign up in front that was a message to all. I knew or felt that it was a message from God, but I didn't exactly know what it meant at the time. But soon I would find out. The message said, please hold on. A woman and a large gay man entered onto the cable car. I overheard them speaking, but it was not human voices that I was hearing. It was the sound of two demons snarling like pigs, laughing about how they had just killed a man. I quietly just returned my attention back front and center. With each stop, each street that we passed by, I became more and more anxious. Fear began to creep up on me. I don't remember the exact street, but it was around like 18th or 19th Street, where I told her, look, I think we missed our stop. We gotta get off. My anxiety was just too much, so we got off and started walking around the city. Now, there were people everywhere. It was dark by this point, and we were kind of walking around trying to find somebody who might be able to help us. We entered into a store and asked a security guard for guidance. The problem was that we were absolutely incapable of communicating in any kind of coherent or clear manner. For all intents and purposes, we were like aliens from another planet, trying to communicate in a foreign language. The security guard was of no help, so we left and started walking the streets. Her anxiety, of course, was ever so increasing, and I don't blame her. I saw a man standing still near the street, kind of just looking around like he was looking for something, where hundreds of people were moving all around him. I got upset and I told her, look, there are people out here who are looking for stupid tourists like us to kidnap. Act normal. We were like the perfect target to be taken advantage of. Lost on drugs in a town that was foreign to us. Of course, this was just the typical extreme paranoia that can be common with psychedelic experiences. So we continued onward in desperation, trying to seek help. We approached a place where people were waiting for a bus. There was a small concrete platform where people could wait and rails on one side, and around there was roads where cars could pass by. On the platform there was a sign with a map, so we went to approach it to see if we could find out where we were. However, because of the oblivious nature of an individual balls deep in a psychedelic nightmare, we approached the sign and a car almost hit us. I immediately thought, well, I'll be damned if I end up on the news as a statistic. I could see it in my mind. Tourists high on magic mushrooms, killed while roaming the streets of San Francisco. And that pissed me off. But luckily we didn't get hit, we survived. There were these two ladies who were standing by the map, and so we went and talked to them to seek guidance. I think they knew we were high because they just laughed at us and told us that we were way far off of where we were supposed to be. They pointed out on the map, it's like, yeah, you're supposed to be way down here on the whole other side of town. And for the moment, all hope was lost. Rightly so, my partner ended up just finding a nice comfy wall on the concrete sidewalk, sat down and gave up. She said, I'm just going to lay here until the morning time. And I thought, well, I'm not. I gave her a 5-second motivational speech, and in my superhero moment of glory, I picked her up and said, we're getting back on that cable car. There was no way in hell that I was going to sit down and give up. So I took her by the hand and we walked back to the place where we had originally gotten off. We got back on the cable car. This time in front of us was a homeless lady who looked broken. She was laying down and trying to sleep. In that moment, I felt a great sense of gratitude. I thought we were merely travelers just passing by, but this was her home. After some time, my girlfriend had walked up to the person in front who was directing the cable car and started talking with them. By this point, the adrenaline had sobered me up enough to where I had some clarity, but I was still just stuck in this kind of psychedelic state of mind. There was what seemed to be a friendly older couple on the other side of us as well, and I think we had talked a bit, and I feel like they had helped provide some useful information. At this point, I felt certain that we were on the right path. Soon we approached what was like 23rd or 24th Street. We got off of the cable car and soon recognized something that was of great relief. There was a landmark that we remembered walking by when we had first got on the cable car earlier that day. We were 100% on the right track, and our motel was just a few blocks away. As we continued, we finally approached the place that we were staying, and we sighed a great breath of relief. I looked at the clock on my phone, and it was 8 p.m. I remember before we had left Golden Gate Park, I looked at my phone, and it was 7. We were lost for exactly 1 hour, even though it felt like an eternity. I was just happy and grateful that we were back at our shitty rat-infested motel. Preparing to relax and just let go of the day, I pulled out my wallet and opened it. What was staring me point blank in the face was a business card for the motel that we were staying at, with the name and the address and the phone number printed right on the front. Moral of the story: most of our problems in life are self-created by our own mind. Because of my own fear, we got off like 5 stops before we were supposed to. I didn't listen to God's message to please hold on. If you can remember, at the end of the day, there is only one way. You will never truly be lost. Because no matter where you are at, you are always on the right path. And we are all headed for the same destination. Like a million different rivers all flowing to the same one ocean. This river can be a wild ride. So my suggestion to you is that when you feel lost, just please hold on.